Chapter 90. Luo Nan maintained his absent-minded state all the way until Octopus opened the health pod. It's not easy to fool them. They are half-experts in this field. Octopus took off his decorative glasses and fanned himself with the flexible screen to express his feelings of hardship. It's over for the time being. They only said that the symptoms were not obvious at the moment and did not dare to deny it completely. Otherwise, they would definitely take him to another hospital. Alright, I admit that it's not safe even now. Be prepared. That's right. Luo Nan was a bit at a loss. How could he prepare for this? In the days to come, he would be treated as a schizophrenic by his aunt and uncle. Octopus saw Luo Nan's depressed mood and chuckled, "Don't get tangled up." In a certain sense, they weren't wrong. You know, from a certain perspective, every ability user has schizophrenia. Luo Nan raised his head in shock. That's not what I said, it's President Ouyang's wise opinion. Ouyang Qin, do you know President Ouyang? Yes, the one who invented the Heir. Yes, that's him. He was the one and only registered extraordinaire in the Xia City Society. He started with the mental enhancement, and he was the absolute authority in this field. You're also a spiritually enhanced type. You can learn from him later. Octopus clearly admired President Ouyang very much. He gave Luo Nan an introduction before saying, President Ouyang once said that as an ability user, we often need a set of logic in the normal world and another set of logic in the inner world. Moreover, every awakened should also have their own set of logic. The logic of the normal world helps you avoid making a joke out of your basic daily life. It allows you to act according to the rules of law and morals. It also teaches you simple principles of socializing and working, allowing you to become a normal human being. Luo Nan went, oh. He discovered that this definition was very similar to the social format. Of course, any sociological theory would have similar concepts. As for the inner world logic, it's the logic of a small circle of ability users. Things like revering strength, focusing on one's own strength, and using one's abilities to differentiate between superior and inferior classes. Originally, it was very simple. He just had to fool around in his own circle, like the MMA association. But the problem is that the inner world has a strong influence on the normal world. This causes the logic of the inner world to distort the logic of the real world. Well, isn't it like schizophrenia? Or should I say, the epitome of all mental illness? Luo Nan nodded, it's a bit similar. Of course they look alike. If there is a difference, it is that psychopaths cannot use their logic to affect reality. Their logic is illusory, fragile, and absurd. But we can, and our logic has become the rule that a considerable number of people must recognize. Octopus made a horizontal gesture. If we were to apply this principle to self-logic, remember, President Ouyang suggested that every awakened should have a set of self-logic. Luo Nan inexplicably sucked in a breath. He felt a certain feeling of déjà vu. It was like a gradually rising tide, flooding his chest, his nose, and his head. Octopus continued, the so-called self-logic is a set of self-consistent theories that ability users use to explain their own abilities, as long as you can form a complete logical chain from beginning to end, and can actually verify it, then no matter how ridiculous it is, it's possible. Just like those madmen in the secret orders. Their actions are absurd, but it doesn't affect their strength. It's because they have an internal logic, and use this logic to successfully distort the external world. We can also give an example, your grandfather, Mr. Luo Yuandao, is that okay? Luo Nan was silent. Octopus continued to speak like this, I've seen your grandfather's symptoms. Disregarding the pathological changes in his nervous system, he is the typical manifestation of self-logic being unable to defeat external logic. If he really does possess an extremely powerful strength that can affect the entire universe, then he is correct. It is appropriate to say that he is the center of the universe, the truth of the world. But in reality, it is impossible to possess this level of strength. Therefore, us ability users cannot fall into delusions. We must abide by reality. We must ponder and revise our internal logic according to our true level of strength. This is so that our logic can be perfectly realized in the external world. Octopus was a bit tired from speaking so much in a single breath. He spread his hands and concluded, from this point of view, every ability user is a psychopath who attempts to use self-logic to distort objective reality. In addition to the dual influence of the logic of the normal world and the logic of the inner world, it is hard for us to avoid being tired. Therefore, some people want to push down the wall, allowing normal people to adapt to the existence of ability users, allowing ability users to dominate this world. There are also people who completely ignore it, don't care, and don't come into contact with it. Even more extreme are those who don't recognize the logic of the normal world. They don't treat non-ability users as people. There are also those who kill. Oh, it's quite unfortunate that you entered this enormous mental hospital at such a young age. You can only suffer a bit more. If you must make a suggestion, it would be better for you to rely on the logic of the inner world. This can be considered a type of compromise. After all, you aren't an awakened yet. You have developed self-logic early on. Perhaps you really will become crazy. And if you follow the logic of the normal world, you will be far too clumsy. Chapter 91. Octopus stared blankly for a while. His eyes focused and looked at Luo Nan. Actually, if you want to kill someone, you don't need this kind of complicated structure. You just need to cut out a random portion from here. The dosage is enough and the results will be absolutely fantastic. Luckily, Luo Nan didn't need to explain. Octopus's eyes emptied once more and he sank back into his professional world. Luo Nan clenched his fist in secret when he saw Octopus's reaction. There's a way. At least at this moment, it wasn't just the concoction of the drug. The principles and effects of the drug were worth serious research by professionals. This was undoubtedly the best news for Luo Nan. He directly shared the molecular formula with Octopus. Didn't he want to obtain a similar result? A notification sound came from the nourishment chamber at this time. It was time for the preset nap time. Luo Nan didn't want to disturb Octopus's train of thought, but he thought that his uncle and aunt would be coming soon. He couldn't help but urge, Bro Octopus, give me a clear answer. Can you do it or not? If you can, I'll give you the dosage and everything else. Give me the ones in front. Octopus's words drifted. Ha! Octopus stared at him once more. His eyes didn't even blink. His face swelled with a layer of blood red. This definitely isn't the original version, right? Any normal person would be toyed to death with so many targeted neurons acting on them at the same time. But its goal isn't to toy with people, right? Amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but admire Octopus for being able to see so much from a simple molecular formula. But then he thought about it. Octopus himself probably had similar thoughts besides his eyesight and professional level. After all, he was a pharmacist and an awakened. Luo Nan really didn't know whether he should be anxious or proud when he saw Octopus's reaction. But he knew that if Octopus continued to stay in the room and was seen by his aunt and uncle, everything would be exposed. In fact, the two elders who had left in succession had already appeared within the range of his senses. It was too late to leave now. Disappear right now and then I'll give you the original version. Okay. Octopus's eyes lit up. He didn't say anything further as he pulled open the window and jumped down. The height of 3 stories was nothing more than a single step for him. Luo Nan let out a long breath. He tidied up his clothes and confirmed that there were no flaws. He pushed open the door and left. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was just about to knock on the door when she was startled by Luo Nan's action of opening the door. She carefully sized up Luo Nan's face a few times before revealing a smile and said, "What do you think? Is it effective?" "It's alright, but there's no need to buy it specifically." Luo Nan began to act with his aunt. To be honest, his acting skills were terrible. Fortunately, his aunt also had something on her mind, so the conversation between the two was a little absent-minded. At this time, Octopus also started to harass him through the Heir, forcing him to pass on the relevant information. The more anxious Octopus became, the calmer Luo Nan became. Now, he had to reevaluate his grandfather's results and make a decision. A chaotic weekend afternoon began. Actually, the afternoon passed by very quickly. After the nap, Luo Nan and Mo Ping played a few rounds of 10 days in the wilderness. Then it was time for Luo Yuandao to go out for a walk every day. The two young men accompanied him cautiously, and listened to the strange words of the old man. The uncle and aunt, standing a little apart, talked to each other in a low voice, and all seemed to be proceeding in a calm and orderly manner. The problem was that Luo Nan's ears never had a moment of peace. Luo Nan's uncle and aunt believed that they were far enough away, but there would always be some words that would fall into the range of Luo Nan's senses. Without exception, they were all topics related to his illness. In addition, Octopus's harassment came from another direction without end. Ever since Luo Nan gave Octopus the corresponding molecular formula, it was as if a bag of salt had been poured over him. Octopus's thoughts began to twitch. Astonishment, bewilderment, doubt. And all of this was completely shattered in front of the living example of Luo Nan. It was just as Octopus had said before. No matter how absurd the logic was, as long as it could be verified in the real world, then one must acknowledge its existence. At this time, Octopus was sitting in the laboratory, trying to mix drugs while sighing and groaning at Luo Nan. "When I see the first step, I feel that I'm an idiot. When I see the last step, I feel that I'm a madman. But when the first step and the last step are put together, I can fucking say, we're all trash. Give me another one. Just give me one more of the prerequisites you mentioned. I need to verify my train of thought. Don't give it to me yet. My logic is about to explode. My God, how could I have thought of this step? Neuronal structure mutation, growth and proliferation, retrogressive inhibition, and even withdrawal reactions. Everything is in place. Even if I had a brain hologram in front of me, I wouldn't be able to calculate it. This is the entire flow of time. This simply isn't the result a human should have. It doesn't matter if it was created or consumed." When Luo Nan first heard these words, he was nearly unable to suppress his excitement and pride. But slowly, these impassioned emotions melted away one by one from the weak and strange movements of his grandfather's body. What meaning did these praises have from his grandfather's perspective? Would this old man, who lived his life sealed within his logic, be able to feel a moment of joy even if he were to add all the honor and prestige he should have? Even looking at it from the most realistic of perspectives, the sanatorium had opened up all-day visitation to an old man whose condition was deteriorating. This was not good news at all. This was no different from giving up on treatment. Luo Nan gazed at the side of the old man's withered face. Every word and action of the old man this day flowed and permeated the bottom of Luo Nan's heart. An idea grew clearer and clearer from within. The sky gradually turned dark, and the all-day visitation came to an end. The family prepared to return to the city. Luo Nan asked Octopus about the drug through the Heir at this time. Octopus took charge of everything. The society has a specialized express delivery channel. It is absolutely safe and convenient. Starting tomorrow, I can supply a fixed quantity. Then I'll have to thank Brother Octopus. This is nothing. Compared to the value of the two molecular formulas, this amount is a drop in the ocean. Octopus was still in a state of eagerness. "Oh right. I want to write a paper based on the molecular formulas during this time. I want to publish it in an internal journal of the society. Can you represent your grandfather and give me the relevant authorization? Luo Nan's heart palpitated with excitement as soon as these words came out. He knew very well that he didn't have the ability to further research and explain his grandfather's theory at this stage. Then, someone who could replace him in all this and give his grandfather the reputation he deserved was one of the best choices. Octopus's level in drug compounding was outstanding. He didn't have any sinister thoughts. It was very pleasant to talk to. He was an extremely good candidate. They can't even be stopped. Octopus Bro concluded, but immediately after, he felt that something was wrong, and quickly added, yes, more important than logic is verification. If you can't interfere with the real world, then you're mentally ill. If you think you can interfere with the real world, then you're severely mentally ill. F***ck, I think what I've told you this afternoon is the content of the intermediate seminar. It's beyond the syllabus. Don't let your imagination run wild. Octopus lived up to his reputation of working in a mental sanatorium. He was extremely sensitive to relevant issues. He was really worried that Luo Nan would let his imagination run wild and act without any scruples. At Luo Nan's age and with his occupation as a psychic, the possible problems that could arise were far too serious. Luo Nan laughed when he saw that Octopus had the intention to continue exhorting him. Relax, bro, Octopus. I know that the most important task for me right now is to temper my body and realize a balance between my mind and body. Then I'll use the dual channels of my mind and body to slowly experience this world and gradually form an answer. I don't need to be in a hurry to explain this world, right? Okay. Octopus didn't know that most of Luo Nan's words were pointers from Hiyuan. He immediately let out a sigh of relief and praised loudly, excellent. Kid, you have the perception. You should do this step by step in a down-to-earth manner. Right now, your body really is lacking in polishing. But it doesn't matter. You're still in puberty. Wait until the matter with the human-faced arachnid is over. I'll find you a set of training methods in the direction of mental strengthening. You'll definitely be able to achieve a balance before your body stops developing in a few years. When that time comes, you should be able to rely on the foundation laid down by the old man to become an awakened. Oh right. I'll send you my notes from the junior seminar in a bit. You can refer to them first. There are a lot of very basic things in there. But these things will still be useful even if you become an extraordinary. Luo Nan took a deep breath. Thanks a lot, bro Octopus. Luo Nan chatted with Octopus about a few basic topics before cutting off the connection. He looked at the sky outside right now. It had already irreversibly fallen into an even deeper darkness. The street lights on both sides of the high-speed magnetic track were like two dragons of light without heads or tails. They extended and danced in the darkness. They seemed to merge together at the corner, but they separated in the blink of an eye. They were incomparably harmonious and synchronized, but they were never able to stick together. Luo Nan leaned against the back of the chair and stared blankly at the reflections of the two dragons of light. One is Grandpa. The other is me, what? Chapter 93. Luo Nan knew that his aunt seemed strong, but she was actually a very traditional woman. She taught her children strictly and her thinking was relatively conservative. She often followed the will of the male in the family when it came to matters of principle. Luo Nan was the only seedling of the Luo family. His aunt was absolutely unable to refuse him just because of this. Luo Nan got what he wanted 2 minutes later. He didn't know what to say to his aunt at this time, so he could only turn his seat back. The car sank into silence once more. Luo Nan used the flexible e-ink screen to flip through his grandfather's diagnosis. The diagnosis did not have a clear time limit, but the truth was hidden between the lines. Luo Yuandao had multiple organ failure due to the many complications caused by the pathological changes to his nervous system. He was already in an extremely dangerous stage. In fact, he was completely relying on medicine and equipment to support himself. From the doctor's perspective, it was already a miracle that this old man could walk, talk, and lose his temper. But the strong stimulation of medicine would eventually be unable to resist the exhaustion of the essence of life. No one knew when this balance would tilt. Perhaps the old man's tolerance to a certain medicine would increase by a bit, and this balance would be broken. Then everything would be irreparable. If everything was simplified, it could be summed up in 2 words, at any time. Unexpectedly, Luo Nan wasn't that surprised. It was as if this was how things should be. The Heir sent another message. It was still Octopus. Octopus sent over his study notes from back in the day. The notes were all the key information he recorded when he participated in the Society's elementary research classes. There was a set of fundamental theories that tempered the mind and the fleshly body. They were very classical and practical. Octopus sent them over naturally meant to point Luo Nan in the right direction. Luo Nan skimmed 10 lines at a glance. He roughly flipped through the notes and stored them in the Heir's personal folder. He wasn't going to look at them in detail. His body leaned back against the back of the chair. His gaze once again looked at the parallel light dragons outside the window. Although the light dragons had the same trajectory, they would never converge. This was inevitable according to the rational rules of the normal world. It was just like how his grandfather, a schizophrenic, couldn't truly understand him when he drew a picture with the thinking of a normal person. Luo Nan spent a lot of time trying to use normal people's logic to interpret his grandfather's theories over the past 5 years. He explained it to normal people and even convinced them. But now he understood, his grandfather's logic completely broke away from the dimensions of normal people. What did the honor and justice of the world have to do with him? What his grandfather needed, or at least what Luo Nan believed he needed, was a clear, straightforward, and correct communication. That was the beginning of everything. The first was logic. Luo Yuandao's logic was classical. His formatting theory was a form similar to primitive philosophy. He advocated the nesting of self-format, social format, and heaven and earth format. This kind of nesting was not from the outside to the inside, from the material to the spirit, it was from the inside to the outside, from the self to the entire universe. Apart from the founder, few people would like this theory. Because it pushed all existences other than me into the whirlpool created by me and turned them into my slaves. Even Luo Nan, who listened and obeyed his grandfather's every word regarding the self-format, interpreted the societal format as a 5-level structure of student, employee, technician, clergyman, and politician. Intentionally or unintentionally, Luo Nan understood these 5 levels of structure as relatively objective existences. The social format was viewed as a set of undiscovered formulas, an undefined model, and the collective creation of a certain human society. This was essentially no different from most of the sociological theories on the market. In fact, it was even worse. It was just as Mo Peng, who excelled in all 7 subjects, had said, where was the standard? Luo Nan heard a clear and insane answer to this question from his grandfather's roar, mine. All of it is mine. My student, my employee, my technician, my clergyman, my politician. Selfish and arrogant to the point of making one nauseous. Extreme to the point of making one tremble. But Luo Nan was able to find a complete and clear thread of logic from within when he eliminated these unnecessary emotions. Luo Nan flipped through the notebook, flipping to the page on the prison building. He flipped to the page on which the wraith sign was derived. These were the 2 psychic diagrams he had left on the paper. Then he flipped back. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and entered the interface of the drawing software. There should be one more here. He had drawn the 3rd psychic diagram on the night of the 28th, which was like a muddy river. However, there was no one inside. Instead, he long pressed to open the 2nd interface of the software. It really was like a muddy river had flowed through here. Then could he understand it this way? The psychic diagram had already been added in this way. The psychic diagram was personally drawn by Luo Nan. Naturally, he knew what it symbolized. The muddy river water was the muddy flow of emotions held by the human-faced arachnid. It was formed from the convergence of the corresponding emotions of countless humans. Practically no one was able to escape from this dusky muddy water. And within this muddy flow, the human-faced arachnid carried out its hunt. Luo Nan stared at the 5-story tower structure. The benefits he obtained were even higher than the benefits he could obtain from purely relying on the training of his body. The results of devouring the human-faced arachnid's avatar had already proven this point. Therefore, the Wraith sign entered the technician level. But the problem was that it didn't have any self-awareness, so it couldn't rise to the level of self-awareness. This level was already its limit. Luo Nan suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity as his thoughts reached this point. He felt as if he had seen such a clear hierarchy, gradually deepening connection, and feedback patterns somewhere before. He searched through his memories, and the relevant scenes were fixed in his grandfather's ferocious roar. Luo Nan pressed his forehead. His fingertips moved, and a certain word suddenly smashed into his brain. It was hard to get rid of it. Temple, God nation, new God, old God. God, God. In Grandpa's crazy talk, the word God appeared very frequently and occupied a very central position. In the past, Luo Nan would not have cared. But now that his horizons had been broadened, it was hard for his thoughts to remain pure. He closed his eyes. In reality, he connected to the psychic wave network through the Heir and entered the interface of the professional association. Then he searched for the secret order's entry, focusing on finding information related to their organizational structure. Soon, a large amount of information poured out. It seemed that the psychic wave network of the society wasn't designed to be too powerful in terms of intelligent filtering. Luo Nan could only search and comb through the information with great difficulty. This lasted until there was a paragraph that attracted his attention. The vast majority of the founders of secret orders were unavoidably influenced by the existing culture of society. They often used ancient myths, mainstream religions, and historical legends as references when they first established the basic structure of their sections. They even used novels and games as models. They painted their sects with all sorts of fantastical colors and designed strict ranks. The specific concepts are vastly different. When examining the secret orders that have existed for over 10 years, one must admit that they have, to a large extent, a convergence that makes one raise an eyebrow has appeared. Especially in terms of organizational structure. The 3 great world secret orders seem to coincidentally divide their internal personnel into 4 ranks. Although the names are all different, the meanings within are very similar. I have unified them as shallow believer, devout believer, fanatic believer, and favored. As the names imply, the believers of these 4 ranks have different degrees of devotion and devotion toward the God. And the gifts and rewards they receive from the God are different as well. Facts can prove that the God and the first oblatum are true to the various ranks of believers. The offerings, demands, and feedback they receive from the God are real and not false. There is a strict hierarchy of judgment. They possess a similar but strict and feasible logic, forming a system that is still stable to this day. Luo Nan felt that this article was very much to his liking after reading halfway. It just so happened to answer his question, so he paid special attention to the author's name. He didn't expect the author to be quite familiar. Bamboo Pole, if it wasn't the same name, then this person was the skinny and tall person who was in charge of intelligence work during the operation on the night of the 28th. Luo Nan remembered that this person always had a cheeky smile on his face, but his words were very sharp. Luo Nan's impression deepened and he matched this person's description with his own situation. Now he finally understood where the sense of familiarity came from. The 4 levels of the secret order's structure. Of course, it was possible that this was a definition borrowed from a certain novel or a certain game. It seemed to be completely comparable to the format pyramid. Although the format pyramid had 5 levels, the highest level, politician, had a rather special definition. It represented the subversion and denial of the entire format. It could be ignored for the time being. The next 4 levels were quite reliable. If he looked at it this way, then his grandfather's formatting theory, or at least the level of the social format, was also a kind of ability explanation system. And it leaned towards the standpoint of the secret order. Then what was the current him? Was he some malnourished god? Luo Nan rubbed his forehead even harder. Tired? We're almost home. His uncle suddenly spoke. Luo Nan went, ah. He jumped out of his thinking mode. It seemed that his attitude just now had made his uncle and aunt even more worried. He thought for a bit and pursed his lips in a feigned relaxed manner. I'm not tired. I'm just a bit hungry. His uncle grunted and turned to speak to his aunt. It's late to go home and cook. Should we let old Mo make a nutritious meal, or should we deal with it outside? Mo Peng cried out in fright. Heavens! Don't trouble him. Chapter 95. Old Mo was the family's AI housekeeper. Since he had carelessly chosen to lean towards environmental protection, this AI's cooking menu forever lacked high-fat and high-protein options. Moreover, the nutritious meals he made were more like medicine than food. Old Mo's uncle and aunt weren't averse to this. They didn't mind occasionally slacking off and tasting fresh food. But for Mo Peng, he would rather drink plain water. Luo Nan also felt that it would be best for him, who had consumed large amounts of mental power, to strengthen his nutritional supplements. Seeing the troubled expressions of the 2 youngsters, Luo Nan's uncle readily agreed, then we'll settle it outside. There's a new restaurant nearby that's pretty good. As he spoke, he used the car's AI to order food online. His luck wasn't bad. Even though he had already entered the bustling Xia City district and it was mealtime, he still successfully placed the order. The SUV cut into another lane and entered the light track of a certain skyscraper. It began to gradually rise to the traffic level. Xia City had 20 transportation layers from the ground to the sky. Aside from the 5 layers that were used by specialized flying machines, the remaining 15 transportation layers mostly used the light rails that bypassed the various high-rise buildings in the city to realize the switching and distribution of the layers. Every night, the outer layers of many skyscrapers would light up like spiraling neon lights. Tens of thousands of flying cars would shuttle back and forth, forming a seemingly never-ending stream of light. It was filled with the beauty of order. Luo Nan continued to read the rest of Bamboo Pole's words, and the word order was mentioned. We've observed the secret orders. The vast majority of them, from top to bottom, show signs of irrationality. But within and between every order, a high degree of unity and order is ultimately manifested. It makes one suspect that all irrational things are stuffed into a hard, firm, and tight framework. Or perhaps it's a kind of magical machine. Irrational raw materials are filled in, and the product is order. I can't find any other explanation for this besides a complete ability explanation system. We can match the secret order's ability explanation system with the society's internal ability explanation system. Shallow believers correspond to unawakened ability users. Devout believers correspond to awakened ones. Fanatics correspond to engineers. Favored correspond to extraordinaries. Basically, the ability levels are quite compatible. Is this the ability explanation system's different routes lead to the same goal? If this is the case, the society will be very happy to sit down with the secret order and eat breakfast together. But in reality, the Church's explanation system still had serious differences with that of the association. The society, the Church, and even the burners. However, Luo Nan couldn't remember his name no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't help feeling a bit embarrassed. This bodyguard was experienced in the ways of the world. He smiled and extended his hand to introduce himself. Zhou Hu. I didn't greet Mr. Luo that day. My apologies. Luo Nan hurriedly called out, Brother Zhou. He was a bit baffled. Brother Zhou is here. Is Sister He here as well? Nope. I'm off today. I'm here for a private gathering. A group of old comrades. Oh right. Crag Burst is here as well. Ha. Luo Nan's impression of Crag Burst, who was also in the society, was much deeper. Crag Burst was a valiant close combat expert. He existed as Luo Nan's protector during the later stages of the operation. Even though Crag Burst didn't have the opportunity to truly display his strength, the 2-meter-tall giant gave Luo Nan a sense of security. Luo Nan even added Crag Burst as a friend through the Heir. You guys are comrades. We've tested each other before. We don't have a deep friendship. But we're familiar now. Zhou Hu laughed as he invited, Mr. Luo, do you want to come over to our place? Forget it. Send my regards to Crag Burst. Luo Nan wasn't good at this sort of social interaction. He was just about to leave when he turned his head to see Mo Peng's short and stout figure make his way in. Mo Peng was stunned for a moment when he saw Luo Nan chatting with a tall and sturdy man with a clear age gap. But he didn't really take it to heart. He greeted Luo Nan and went to release. Luo Nan found it inappropriate to leave first. He smiled at Zhou Hu, my older cousin. Zhou Hu understood and took his leave first. Mo Ping came to the sink just as Luo Nan left. He grimaced in pain. Did you just run into an acquaintance? Dad ran into one too. This place is evil. Another person walked in before Luo Nan could finish speaking. Luo Nan's back was facing the door right now. The person just happened to see Luo Nan's back as well as the side of his face reflected in the mirror. The person suddenly trembled and turned to leave. Chapter 96. As the voice fell, the person who had just entered hurriedly barged in again. He lowered his head and quickly entered the room. It looked like he really couldn't hold it in any longer. Mo Peng was baffled, but he also chuckled. Luo Nan could vaguely feel that this person's strange attitude was due to him. He swept a glance at the person's face and saw that this person was very young. He wore vintage gold-rimmed glasses. At first glance, he looked a bit like Octopus Bro. However, his hair was combed and shiny. His skin was tender. He was a bit feminine. He looked familiar, but Luo Nan didn't recognize him for a moment. Luo Nan couldn't block this person at the urinal and interrogate him about this sort of thing. Luo Nan only kept his guard up as he walked out with Mo Peng. He casually picked up the topic from before. Where did this acquaintance come from? From work. He looks like a rich man. He brought a bodyguard and a lawyer. It looks like he's here to discuss business. He looks quite young. Mo Peng only remembered this much. The two strolled leisurely in the hallway. Then the sound of footsteps came from behind them. The young man who had gone to the wrong door just now walked in this direction after coming out of the restroom. However, he turned into a private room halfway. The distance was just right. Luo Nan released his mental senses to look at the situation inside. He sized up the faces of the people in the room when he heard a sentence, "This place is evil. Whoever comes, that's who." Who? The one we just talked about. He nearly choked Li Shuoqing to death. He even joined the order club. F***ck me. That psychopath. Luo Nan couldn't help but touch his face. Luo Nan's advance had already exceeded the range of his senses after hearing this sentence. However, he didn't need to listen to the following words. He finally remembered that the glasses guy was one of Xie Juanping's bad friends. He seemed to be called Lu Tao. Luo Nan's initial understanding of the Darksider life form came from this person. There were 2 or 3 familiar faces among the people in the private room. He should have met them on the warship. They were probably a small circle of rich kids. Luo Nan just didn't expect that he would have a bit of fame in that circle. Even though it didn't sound good. Luo Nan no longer paid attention to this group of people. He and Mo Peng entered the hall together. The conversation within the private room continued to progress. It wouldn't be wrong to say that this was the circle of the rich second generation, but it would be more accurate to say that it was the majority of the members of the Construction Society's executive committee, except for Li Shuecheng, who was still lying in the hospital. Originally, they were going to have a meal with the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund, the co-investor, but the other party still hadn't arrived. The group of people hadn't had a meal for a long time, and they were all stifled. They could only rely on bragging and gossiping to survive. The relationship between this kid and Xie Junping is unclear. I heard that the next morning, Li Shuecheng called a shattered soul and his gang to beat him up. In the end, not only did they not succeed, they were even beaten up by Xie Junping and sent to the hospital. This can't be right. Why did I hear that it's related to Lien Jieyu? Have you seen Xie Junping hanging out with Lien Fu these past 2 days? It seems to have collapsed. At this moment, Lang Ding stood up from the main seat. I've just contacted him. He's outside. I'll go out and welcome him. Lu Taogang started a new topic. Although he was happy with it, he couldn't help but feel a little displeased. This person sure is arrogant. At this point, we don't even know his name or his appearance. I just need to know the Rainbow Fund's official seal and procedures. Lang Ding chuckled. He called a few people out and walked towards the main hall. Luo Nan and Mo Peng had already entered the main hall at this time. They could see from afar that the table they had reserved for 4 people at this time was actually full. There was even a person standing outside a small booth. Mo Peng rolled his eyes when he saw this. You haven't finished chatting yet. Don't tell me you want to eat at the same table. Luo Nan walked a bit closer. He wasn't obstructed by the antique wooden window, so he just happened to be able to see the appearance of the person outside the booth. His feet suddenly stopped. The person standing had a swift and fierce build. His skin was dark and shiny. His gaze swept all around with ice-cold vigilance. He had the appearance of a bodyguard. The dark-skinned bodyguard clearly sensed Luo Nan's gaze at the same time that Luo Nan's gaze swept over. His cold gaze was cast over. It was the dark-skinned man that Luo Nan had seen at Gear. The burner. Luo Nan's brows furrowed slightly. His footsteps paused for a bit, then he sped up and walked straight over. He saw that aside from his aunt and uncle, there were 2 other people sitting. One was Lawyer Zhu, whom he had seen that day. The other was a man who looked to be around 30 years old. His face was handsome and he seemed to be smiling. But from the contours of his face, he should have maintained a serious appearance all year round. His smile appeared stiff, distorted, and a bit inexplicable coldness. But the thing that gave Luo Nan the deepest impression was the area around this person's eye sockets. The color of blood and tendons interweaved together to form a strange contrast with his current smile. Oh right, this person's eyes were a dark red color. Luo Nan got closer and further confirmed that the atmosphere in the booth was absolutely abnormal. His uncle's expression was tranquil. His aunt's expression was as deep as water. Neither of them said a word. Chapter 97. I've been busy lately, so the update time is a bit messy. Please forgive me. No matter what, it had to be guaranteed that he would be able to eat twice a day. After this week, the rhythm would adjust. This chapter is the second update on the 17th. The vast majority of the Construction Society's executive committee members had stayed at Acumen College for over 10 years. 6 years ago, Yan Hong's academic scandal had shaken the entire world. There was no reason for them to forget it. What's more, wasn't the theme they were currently revolving around Gear? In that academic scandal, the accident in Gear's underground laboratory was the scene that caused the world to be in an uproar. Yan Hong, facing the criticism of the entire world, deliberately created an accident, destroyed evidence, and used the crudest method to cover up his crimes. This also caused Acumen College, who was responsible for the administration, to lose face. After the incident, Yan Hong, who was condemned by everyone, disappeared without a trace. Yan Yongbua, who was a lecturer in the academy, also disappeared. Most people felt that they would never see them again. But reality slapped him hard in the face. It really is Yan Yongbua. He used to give me lessons. Lu Tao recognized Yan Yongbua and couldn't help but poke his companion beside him. Hey, he's the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund. That's a credit limit of tens of billions. And it seems that Quantum Corporation is behind it. Is Yan Hong coming back for revenge? His companion shook his head. He did not and could not answer this question. Yan Yongbua's demonic crimson eyes swept across the faces of Lang Ding and the others. He nodded slightly as a greeting. Then, he turned his gaze to Luo Shuqing, who was glaring at him, and bowed. Miss Luo, I'm sorry. My words were inappropriate. Actually, I have always admired and respected senior sister Qingwen. Therefore, when I returned this time, the first thing I did was to purchase gear. This was senior Qingwen's undying work back then. Back then, I also hoped to restore the glory of my father's laboratory. Luo Shuqing didn't hide her emotions at all. In your dreams. Yan Yongbua calmly tapped his temple. Now, I have the ability to turn dreams into reality. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that you haven't eaten yet. I won't disturb you for now. We'll talk about the transfer later. He walked straight out of the cubicle, and Lawyer Zhu hurriedly got up to follow. Luo Nan stared coldly at this strange man outside the compartment. He didn't know who Yan Yongbo was at first, but now he was clear, it was this person. Yan Hong's son. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe him as a mortal enemy. No matter which side it was, they had no intention of resolving the enmity. Yan Yongbo walked to Luo Nan's side. Just as he was about to brush shoulders with Luo Nan, Yan Yongbo suddenly turned his head. He used a twisted smile to meet Luo Nan's clear and cold eyes. Speaking of which, my father and Mr. Luo Yuandao have worked together for many years. I was also Mr. Luo Yuandao's student and research assistant for a period of time. Senior Zhongheng, Senior Qingwen, and I are fellow alumni of Acumen College. If there is a chance to coexist, I hope to continue the fate of our two families at Gear. Luo Nan was disinclined to respond to such meaningless words. But in the next moment, Yan Yongbua suddenly turned around without any warning. He raised his hand and embraced Luo Nan's shoulder. It looked intimate, but Yan Yongbua bent his waist slightly. His unyielding strength forced Luo Nan to bend over. His mouth was right next to Luo Nan's ear as he laughed in a low voice. I was exaggerating a bit just now. You weren't that small when you were wrapped up in the womb. At worst, you were like a chihuahua rolling around in the solution. You were actually quite cute. Yan Yongbua felt Luo Nan's body go rigid in an instant. He patted Luo Nan's shoulder. It's just a pity for Senior Qingwen. I've been fantasizing about her since junior high. But from then on, I never did it again. Do you know why? Luo Nan turned his face slightly. His gaze was penetratingly cold and hard, but it was unable to affect Yan Yongbua's twisted smiling face in the slightest. It's too easy for me to make associations. When her face flashes in my mind, I think of that pile of rotting flesh and bones. In this instant, a certain string in Luo Nan's mind snapped. The heavily chained crow was about to pierce out of his body amidst the rattling vibrations, piercing through the head of the man before him. But a scorching firepower was transmitted from Yan Yongbo's body in advance. It penetrated through Luo Nan's neck, just like a red-hot blade. The instant brush with death caused Luo Nan's thoughts to stagnate. The heavily chained crow didn't come out, but Yan Yongbo's words pressed into his eardrums one word at a time. Look. This is the archetype format. This is the burner. This is the true result. And your kind is worthless. I didn't have the time to say those words to your dead old man back then. I'll give them to you. Yan Yongbo let go of Luo Nan's shoulder and laughed loudly just like that. He directly left, and the dark-faced bodyguard followed closely behind. Lawyer Zhu also hurriedly followed. Lang Ding and the other members of the construction society looked at each other in dismay. They hesitated for a while, but they still chased after Yan Yongbo. Yan Yongbo seemed to have gone mad. He laughed all the time. His laughter was hoarse and sharp, echoing throughout the entire dining hall. Nan Nan. Luo Shuqing, who had just been intimidated by the inexplicable power, finally broke free. She flipped over the chair and threw herself over. She hugged Luo Nan, who was still in a bent posture, and spoke incoherently. Are you okay? What did he say? That bastard. Are you okay? What did he say? Luo Nan didn't say anything. Chapter 98. I came back too late today. The second chapter will be finished in the wee hours of the morning. I might as well put it on tomorrow morning. Everyone doesn't have to stay up to wait. It's equivalent to tomorrow's third chapter. Also, there was an error in the chapter numbering. It has been corrected. Because of their pause, Lang Ding and the others also caught up. Yan Yongbo didn't pay them any attention, only using a very serious expression to stare at Lawyer Zhu, hoping to get an answer. Lawyer Zhu's legs were really weak. His heart was already bursting with regret and fear. Now, he was more certain than ever that Yan Yongbo wasn't a normal person from the very core. Yan Yongbo wasn't normal, but Lawyer Zhu believed himself to be very normal. How could he possibly speak of this kind of kill matter in front of others? He just wanted to block Yan Yongbo's mouth and stop him from spitting out those murderous words. For this, he desperately squeezed his brain tissue and tried hard to form words. Mr. Yan, perhaps we can use another method. If we want to circumvent his right to review, the best way is to terminate his membership in the club. Yes, I know this is impossible, but there is an alternative. Yes, there is another way. Under pressure, people's potential was indeed limitless. Lawyer Zhu's brain really did jump out with a brand new train of thought. Yes, we can make him withdraw. We just need to prove that Luo Nan has some kind of direct interest relationship with this auction. Then we just need to hold a hearing and I can shut him up forever. At this time, Lang Ding and the others had already formed a circle, blocking most of the corridor. He wanted to greet him, but Yan Yongbo didn't even bother to look him in the eye. Instead, he was quite interested in Lawyer Zhu's words. Benefits. For example, we can question whether or not Luo Nan had a secret agreement with the Mystic Arts Research Society beforehand. After all, the timing of his entry into the society is too coincidental. We can completely make an issue out of this. Yan Yongbo nodded slightly. Very good, but how do we prove it? No, Mr. Yan, I'm just making an analogy. Lawyer Zhu finally regained his confidence in his professional field. His voice became a bit louder. We can completely adopt a more proactive method. In fact, I think that the transfer intention that you mentioned just now is a very good entry point. I don't really understand the situation inside. It seems to be related to some patents. Yan Yongbo's expression did not change. He nodded slightly. More or less. Luo Nan is the direct descendant of the victim. The legal heir. That's right, that's his grandfather. Then, if you don't mind, you can use your private identity to fight a lawsuit with them. As long as the court accepts it, a beneficial relationship will appear between you and Luo Nan. Right when Luo Shuqing was fidgeting restlessly, Luo Nan opened his mouth and said, "I'm hungry." Then he picked up his chopsticks and began to eat the food that had been placed on the dining table. This wasn't a very polite action, but it more or less displayed a rational attitude. Luo Shuqing and Mo Haiheng glanced at each other. They didn't have any intentions of defying Luo Nan. They ate silently as well. No one was able to taste the food. Even the most ignorant Mo Ping didn't have the mood to play games. He looked at this and looked at that, his fat face wrinkling. The dinner ended hastily, and the family took a car home. Luo Shuqing's emotions, which she had been suppressing in public, completely erupted in the car within the privacy of her own home. Despicable and shameless mad dogs. They've been restrained in Quantum Corporation for 5 years, and this father and son are biting anyone they see. This was the first time in Mo Peng's life that he had seen his mother use profanity. He was truly stupefied as he watched. Luo Shuqing wanted to say more, but Mo Haiheng spoke in a low voice. "He's asleep." Luo Shuqing was slightly stunned. She leaned forward slightly and looked at the front passenger seat. Luo Nan was leaning against the back of the seat, sleeping. She suppressed all the words she had in her stomach. Luo Nan's reaction was abnormal no matter how she looked at it. The husband and wife looked at each other once more. They could see the worry in each other's eyes. Luo Nan could only apologize to his aunt and uncle for their worry. He actually hadn't slept. He just wanted to be quiet for a moment and organize his thoughts. But right now the emotions in his heart were churning. How could he calm down? He had been disturbed time and time again, so he could only shift his consciousness elsewhere. The second-level interface of the drawing software opened up on his retina through the external neuron. The interface here clearly had a subtle corresponding relationship with his mental plane. The turbid river water surged with waves, forming a whirlpool of its own. It was as if the whirlpool was a clear indication of his fluctuating emotions. Thousands of playing cards floated along with the whirlpool, forming a chaotic mess. Only the 3 believers in the format pyramid remained relatively stable. Luo Nan's gaze cut past Xie Junping and Cat Eyes. It didn't stop there. In the end, it fell upon the Wraith sign on the technician level. Chapter 99. The red light signified that the Wraith sign was devouring. In reality, it was devouring Luo Nan's restless and violent fury. The Wraith sign was born from devouring the negative emotions of the human heart. It was restricted by the heavily chained crow here, so it was impossible for it to harm Luo Nan's vital energy. But when such intense emotions squeezed in, it was tantamount to releasing a layer of restriction. As the red light gradually flourished, the Wraith sign sprayed out thousands of lines. It was similar to Luo Nan's sketches, but it was 10 times faster. In an instant, a complex and malevolent structure was constructed. 6 eyes lined up, each with a different color. 8 claws extended to the side, merging with the human body. Such a demonic and ugly image was the human-faced arachnid. When this image was completed, Luo Nan's restlessness on the mental plane had already reached the point where it was ready to gush out. Within the format pyramid, the human-faced arachnid prepared to pounce, and Luo Nan's mind leaped. In an instant, the world changed. Luo Nan's consciousness suddenly separated from the car. His mental senses broke free from the shackles and expanded to the limit in all directions. Luo Nan's soul left his body at this moment. The SUV carrying his main body drove off into the distance. Only his soul remained here, occupying an empty plane. Luo Nan didn't feel lonely at all. This was because the range of his mental senses instantly increased explosively by 100 times, 1,000 times, the splendidly lit metropolis, the crisscrossing and speeding stream of cars, the entangled and restless living beings. An inconceivable scene was formed in this moment, smashing into Luo Nan's mind. Roar! Luo Nan cast off all his worries, restraints, and burdens. He ignored the inherent logic of the bustling metropolis and the multitude of living beings. He only responded to the most direct and violent emotions in his heart. He faced the sky and roared. The heavily chained crow rattled and trembled on his soul body, swimming endlessly. And at the front of the chain, the malevolent and ugly human-faced arachnid felt Luo Nan's violent emotions. It faced the sky and roared in response. The two forces interweaved together, forming a surging psychic wave that rapidly spread in all directions. The majestic metropolis seemed to be slightly stifled at this moment. Then it returned to its established routine, as if it wasn't affected at all. On the contrary, the hundreds of crows that had already entered their nests flew up in fright. They attracted the attention of the nearby residents and passers-by, bringing a bit of restless emotions. This kind of intelligent bird seemed to have a spiritual sense that was difficult for ordinary people to reach. It felt the impact of the restlessness in the air and found it difficult to stay in its nest. Luo Nan calmed down after venting out his soul howl. Chapter 100. It was said that the intelligence of Crow surpassed that of a 7-year-old child. He didn't know if it was because of Ink's innate talent or the effect of hypnosis, but Ink's intelligence was clearly higher than others of its kind, and its intuition was also better. It circled a few times, but it was unable to see the silhouette of Luo Nan. It folded its wings and landed on a protruding area of the outer wall of a skyscraper. It looked all around, and it scratched and hissed. It was clearly using its usual method to arouse Luo Nan's attention. Right now, Luo Nan's soul body was no more than 700 meters away. His heart stirred slightly when he saw Ink act like this. The heavily chained crow clattered as psychic waves converged and shot toward Ink. This was originally just Luo Nan's attempt, but Ink clearly quivered in his senses. The feathers on its body stood up, and it immediately turned its head. It was impossible to see anything in the dark night, but after a moment of hesitation, it still flapped its wings and flew toward the location of Luo Nan's soul body. It began to fly and glide around after arriving in this area. It seemed as if it could really sense Luo Nan's existence. Good boy. Luo Nan felt a bit gratified. He tried using this brand new method to communicate with Ink. The results were indeed much better than simple hypnosis. The feedback he received from Ink was even more direct and clear. There was a great feeling of telepathy. The human-faced arachnid's 6 heterochromatic eyes adjusted their angles. It seemed to be paying attention to this new comrade. Of course, the human-faced arachnid's avatar didn't possess any self-awareness. This was just a two-way connection that originated from Luo Nan. Luo Nan felt that he was like a wizard of the ancient era. The heavily chained crow was his artifact. It was like a giant python coiled around his soul body. The human-faced arachnid was a demon that he summoned. The crow was a spirit bird that he tamed. His power was displayed through this method. Time was of the essence. Luo Nan could not waste too much time because of Ink. Right when he was about to have Ink return, a subtle stimulus was transmitted back to him from his main body. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment, but he soon discerned that the stimulus came from the Heir. This miniature instrument manifested an inconceivable effect. After it detected that Luo Nan's main body was lacking in consciousness, it actually captured the subtle sensation of his out-of-body soul. It transformed the information into an even purer psychic wave. Through the sensing frequency, it traversed several dozen kilometers and accurately entered Luo Nan's mental plane. The message was a conversation request, and it was accompanied by a notification from the psychic wave network. Do you want to turn on the remote sensing function? If he refused to activate it, the conversation would automatically be skipped. Chapter 101. Cragburst stared blankly as a sturdy crow charged in from outside the car window. The crow bumped into the thick leather of the seat, then fell down and landed on the back seat. The two feathers that had fallen were blown out of the window by the strong wind that was blowing in and out of the carriage. But in the end, this uninvited guest stayed. "Mr. Luo." "Yes, it's me." The crow straightened its body and cawed twice. The sound was coarse and unpleasant to the ears, but it surprisingly matched the heavy metal roaring in the car. Of course, the real way to respond was through the hex ear. Cragburst never would have thought that the so-called "I'm coming" would be this kind of situation. For a moment, he forgot that the crow's sharp claws had already scratched the surface of the genuine leather seat. He widened his eyes and looked up and down several times. Spiritually enhanced people have so many tricks up their sleeves. "What is this, a summoner? You share senses with this bird?" "Yes, that's about it." Since Cragburst had spoken like this, Luo Nan took advantage of the situation to admit it. This was to avoid looking for other reasons that would make his story full of flaws. "Yo, looks like a lot of people have underestimated you." To be able to attach oneself to a flexible object and share one's senses is a brilliant move of the soul sense division. Without the corresponding talent, even an awakened would find it hard to do it beautifully. It's just too wretched. Cragburst curled his lips. He was a muscle-oriented person, so he wasn't too fond of cloning and incarnation techniques. However, the other party hadn't awakened yet, and he was a toothpick guy who was seriously biased towards other subjects. It was already quite good that he could use such a method. In particular, his attitude of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance and never letting a grudge rest overnight was even more praiseworthy. At this moment, Ink jumped twice on the leather seat and spread its wings to fly again. The Tigerburst was a military-modified off-road vehicle. The interior of the vehicle was extremely spacious. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to fit a big fellow like Cragburst. However, it was still a little difficult for Ink, which had a body length of nearly 70 centimeters and a wingspan of nearly 1 meter, to flap its wings. After flapping twice, it couldn't exert any strength. Cragburst laughed out loud as he watched. He directly extended his hand, grabbed Ink, and placed it on the control panel. "Here, the view is the best. Did you see that? There are 2 cars in front, the blue MPV." Ink's sharp toes gripped the edge of the dashboard, and it stood very steadily. Its black eyes stared at the target car in front of it with great concentration. "What do you think? Do you want to do it?" Cragburst had always wanted to play big. "No. I don't need it for now." Luo Nan responded simply. The person who attacked was like a kite that had lost control. He flew from his beloved high-displacement motorcycle and was smashed horizontally. This was too ruthless. The motorcycles at the back couldn't dodge in time. In an instant, half of the motorcycles were flipped over. It was a mess. Modified humans. No one knew who shouted this, but the motorcycles that accompanied them all the way dispersed. Some people had already braked and stopped on the spot, no longer following them. But at this moment, a motorcycle that was originally behind them sped up and soon ran alongside the off-road vehicle. The rider grinned maliciously at the car, raised the thick barrel with one hand, and pulled the trigger. The classic shotgun instantly ejected 12 8mm tungsten alloy pellets, covering the entire front of the carriage. Without even looking at the result, the knight swung his arm and loaded the gun. He was about to do it again. But when he raised the muzzle of the gun once more, what met the muzzle was Cragburst's malevolent smile. Cragburst's face was completely unharmed. There was a muffled bang as the rider flew up from the motorcycle. He crossed 8 lanes of traffic and flew into the illegal buildings at the far end. Cragburst leapt out from the car window and took his place. He sat steadily on the motorcycle and snatched the classic shotgun. He roared and used the shotgun like an iron rod. He rushed forward and rushed back, knocking down a group of reckless gangsters in the blink of an eye. He had been cooped up in the car for over 10 minutes, acting as a moving prisoner. That feeling wasn't good at all. The motorcycle beneath him was a bit small compared to his body size, but the feeling of being able to move according to his will and move at will was really great. Cragburst laughed heartily and accompanied the Tigerburst off-road vehicle. He roared to his heart's content along with the surging melody. As the vehicle advanced forward, the gangsters who had fallen to the ground quickly disappeared without a trace. Only Cragburst and the off-road vehicle remained on the road for a time. Cragburst was singing to his heart's content when he suddenly stooped down and accelerated without any warning. He pulled away at least a body's length of distance in an instant. He caught a glimpse of a line of fire cutting through from the corner of his eye. A hole the size of a wash basin appeared on the road 20 meters behind him. Only then did he hear a peculiar hissing sound enter his ears. Cragburst chuckled. It was a large-caliber electromagnetic rifle. However, the shooter's aim was terrible to the extreme. That's not right. The shooter didn't have any intention of following up after missing the target. He suddenly sensed something and followed the trajectory of the bullet. He couldn't see any human figures within the pitch-black floor, but there was a pitch-black bird flapping its wings and flying. Chapter 104. Cragburst's military-modified Tigerburst SUV was an extremely astonishing vehicle for personal transportation. It could run over the heads of ordinary private cars in its off-road mode. However, the big fellow that had just run into the range of Luo Nan's mental senses could completely replicate a similar scene onto the Tigerburst SUV. 5 seconds after Luo Nan discovered it, the enormous shadow that slowly pressed over finally attracted Cragburst's attention. The enormous size of the shadow caused Cragburst, who had been wild and fearless the entire time, to gape subconsciously. He forgot to speak for a time. It was a super-heavy road roller. It was over 5 meters tall, and its enormous body occupied 2 car lanes horizontally. It was completely the willful piling of industrial power. Just the vibrating wheels in front of it already exceeded the roof of the Tigerburst SUV. Perhaps this big fellow was a large tool used in the construction of this main road back in the day. Its appearance was already extremely old. The driver's compartment was already missing its top, and its entire body was covered in grotesque graffiti. However, it had undergone certain modifications. Long and sharp blades were installed on both sides of the vibrating wheels. This allowed it to cover the width of over 4 car lanes. The weight of the vehicle was at least 50 tons. The already damaged asphalt road became even more tragic under the effect of the vibrating wheels as it drove past. Of course, the antique road roller's speed was very ordinary. It definitely didn't exceed 30 kilometers per hour. If the SUV were to turn around, it would be completely easy for this old fellow to eat the dust behind it. Or it could make a small detour and easily pass by it. But the problem was that the AI that controlled the SUV's movements didn't have any awareness that it was about to be smashed into pieces. It continued to maintain its original speed, direction, and route as it moved forward in a perfectly straight line. Hey! Hey! Cragburst did his best to wake his precious up, but it was destined to be futile. The distance between the two sides quickly became 300 meters. 200 meters. The Tigerburst SUV contributed to the majority of the distance traveled, and it continued to do so. Luo Nan noticed that there were at least 5 gun-wielding personnel in the damaged compartment of the road roller other than the driver. They all raised their gun barrels and pointed them at Cragburst's position. 2 of them were electromagnetic rifles with astonishing destructive power. Only the heavens knew how these strictly controlled military firearms ended up here. Did the military also dispose of trash here? Out of the way. Luo Nan threw 2 siege hammers over as he warned Cragburst. The targets were precisely 2 gang members wielding electromagnetic rifles. One of them fell to the ground and fainted. But a bewitching red light suffused the eyes of the other person. He was actually completely unaffected. He quickly adjusted the muzzle of his gun, and flames exploded on it. The metal bullet carried a terrifying initial speed. It crossed a distance of several hundred meters in an instant, directly piercing through the location of Luo Nan's soul body. This shot did not touch anything substantial, but it truly gave Luo Nan a fright. The other party's spiritual sense was very sharp, and his judgment was very accurate. What was even more inconceivable was that he was immune to the siege hammer. Luo Nan had pierced through all of his material defenses, but it seemed that Luo Nan's attack aimed at the mental plane had missed. That gunshot had alarmed Cragburst. The other 3 firearms had already opened fire at this time. They were old-fashioned gunpowder weapons that were commonly seen in the black market. Their power was quite astonishing. Cragburst cursed loudly. The motorcycle suddenly sped up and swerved outwards, dodging the whistling rain of bullets. It narrowly brushed past the twisted blades of the road roller. Luo Nan was left behind. Cragburst let the motorcycle run away crookedly. Cragburst jumped up, and his strong body easily leapt over 4 meters into the air. He directly stepped onto the cockpit of the road roller and smashed it with a heavy fist. The driver was sent flying from the other side. Only now did the others adjust their muzzles. But no one was able to block Cragburst's fist. They fell from the road roller one after another. Cragburst instantly cleared the obstructions. Then he tried to control the big fellow beneath him to make it stop immediately. As long as it didn't move, Cragburst's beloved Tiger Burst Jeep wouldn't be smashed into smithereens even if it couldn't avoid a collision. The distance between the 2 vehicles was less than 50 meters at this time. A collision and a crushing would only take 2 or 3 seconds. Cragburst had operated this type of large-scale machine before. He felt that he could do it. But then Luo Nan's sharp warning sound penetrated the bottom of his heart in the form of psychic waves. Dodge. Luo Nan's lack of professionalism was completely exposed at this critical moment. Though he gave a warning, he didn't indicate the direction of danger. Cragburst needed to make his own judgment. Fortunately, Cragburst had ample experience. He was able to discern the degree of danger from Luo Nan's hasty attitude. He didn't hesitate at all and leaped out from the cockpit. He didn't even stop on the road roller, he just flipped over. A plump metal pineapple was tossed into the air at nearly the same time as his movements. It fell right into the cockpit. F***ck me. Cragburst was shocked when he saw this scene from the corner of his eyes. A grenade. And it was a defensive grenade with the most terrifying killing radius. This sort of crude old-fashioned weapon had an enormous destructive power. It still had a certain place in the military. It could receive miraculous effects in special situations. The grenade was clearly pressed in someone's hand. The person had calculated the time to ignite it. It exploded with a bang while still in midair. Over 1,000 shrapnel were like a whistling storm, covering a vast space of 50 meters. With such an astonishing killing radius, even the gang members who had just fallen from the car were swept up. They screamed miserably. Cragburst wasn't known for his agility, but his mind worked quickly. He borrowed the force to rebound just as his body landed on the ground. He caught up to the road roller with a stride and stuck his body to the side of the car. His series of judgments couldn't be said to be incorrect, but someone was waiting for him here. A fist came smashing straight at him. The fist's speed and timing were all grasped to the peak of perfection. But the most shocking thing was the inconceivable weight. Cragburst received it with a single hand, but his entire upper arm was forcibly deflected. He could only watch helplessly as the heavy fist smashed into the side of his face. Cragburst soared into the air amidst the flying shrapnel and tumbled to a spot a dozen meters behind the road roller. An enormous rumbling sound came from right in front of the road roller at this time. The 5-ton Tiger Burst Jeep collided with the 50-ton road roller at a speed of nearly 100 kilometers per hour. The former's kinetic energy was reduced to zero in an instant. The front of the car caved in and parts exploded in the air. It was a tragic sight to behold. Although the road roller didn't immediately roll over the Jeep, it maintained its previous speed after a slight pause. It continued to push the scrapped Jeep forward. More and more parts of the Jeep were swept up by the vibrating wheels. It seemed that the most miserable fate was unavoidable. Luo Nan had witnessed everything that had happened before and after the road roller. He was stunned for a time. But at this moment, his attention was placed on the person who had caused all of this. Yes, it was the person who had ignored the human-faced arachnid siege hammer attack. The person who had played dead when Cragburst boarded the car. Then the person who had tossed out a defensive grenade and seized the opportunity to strike Cragburst down with a heavy punch. Now the person had jumped from the road roller onto the Tiger Burst Jeep. Chapter 105. Luo Nan was already able to clearly see the person's appearance. He was a white man, a rare sight in Xia City. He looked to be in his 40s, maybe a bit older. The scars on his face showed that he had been through a lot. Of course, Luo Nan had a deeper impression of this person's left eye. It was a mechanical eye. If one looked closely, they would find that there were no decorations on it. The cold metal structure, as well as the red light in the center that made one's heart tremble, made it difficult for one to treat it with a normal heart. This guy isn't a normal human. Luo Nan's mental senses had been covering the target this entire time. He discovered that this person's appearance was just as it indicated. The metal composition and related structures on this person's body were far greater than that of a normal person. They're modified humans, right? Cough, cough, damn it. Cragburst's voice came through the hex ear. Cragburst had been struck down from the car by a fist and had been covered by the destructive shrapnel of the grenade. If Cragburst had been a normal person, he would have died a long time ago. However, Cragburst had reported his safety to Luo Nan at the first instant. Cragburst also understood the relevant information of the enemy, displaying his robust physique and experienced. Modified humans. Luo Nan had some understanding of the relevant concepts. He saw that there was still some time before Cragburst would catch up, so he used his senses to scan in greater detail while exchanging information with Cragburst. You're saying that he's like the military's mechanical warriors. What mech warrior? He's just a modified human. There's no other way to describe it, and this modification has been abolished for almost 20 years, at least on the surface. Is he over 40 years old? Yeah, pretty much. That should be it. He's pretty good at using military equipment, and he's pretty good at scamming people. But a guy like him must have special privileges. He has to report to the SCA every year. Why is he here? Cragburst felt that this was incomprehensible, and so did Luo Nan. The gang members of the recycling stratum might seem lawless, with all kinds of weapons, guns, and grenades, making it a mini arsenal, but that was because the government had basically given up on the governance of the recycling stratum. As a matter of fact, most of them had extremely low clearance due to their criminal records. Under the strict control of the credit clearance network in today's society, they could only be tyrants on the recycling stratum. Once they stepped out of the recycling stratum and into the public, they would be closely monitored. If they did anything sensitive, law enforcement officers would appear above their heads and send them to jail. It was hard to imagine that a special forces soldier who had undergone military modification would come here to make a living. His special authority was as eye-catching as a lighthouse on the SCA's surveillance network. The government would never allow such a dangerous person to work with the gangs in the recycling stratum. As for special situations like committing a monstrous crime, it would be more meaningful for them to escape into the wilderness instead of here. No matter what, this guy has angered me. I will have a good talk with him. Cragburst gnashed his teeth on the other side. But soon after, he slapped his thigh. Found it. It's here. Keep an eye on him, I'll be right there. He found the high-powered motorcycle that had fallen in the middle of the road, turned around, and chased after it. In about half a minute, he would be able to fight for his reputation again. Luo Nan focused his attention on the altered human. Actually, Luo Nan was more interested in this person's current behavior than in identifying his identity. After striking down Cragburst, the altered human arrived atop the heavily deformed jeep. It tore apart the roof and entered the driver's compartment, which could no longer be seen. Next, the altered human smashed the control panel with a punch. He extended his hand inside and fished for something. Luo Nan couldn't help but associate this scene with the loss of control of the car's AI and the metal bug ejected from Yan Yongbu's car. Without a doubt, Yan Yongbu had done something to the jeep. His methods were certainly closely related to the metal bug that had sunk into the jeep. From then on, the development of the situation deviated from the normal track. And right now, this altered human seemed to be acting as a liaison, a recycler, retrieving the metal bug. This kind of behavior was quite compatible with the recycling stratum. And from this point of view, perhaps the metal bug was a very crucial thing. Perhaps it involved some deep secrets of Yan Yongbu's. Luo Nan's mental senses became even more meticulous when he thought of this. Though his soul body couldn't do much right now, he wanted to lock onto the target of the other first before considering his next step. The altered human was certainly aware of his detection, just like how he had sensed the siege hammer. However, his thirst for his target clearly surpassed everything else. He just raised his head and shot a cold glance, but he didn't actually lock onto Luo Nan's position. He just continued to lower his head and search. Suddenly, the altered human's arm that had extended into the control panel paused for a moment. His cold and stiff face had a change, forming into a slightly sinister smile. Then he pulled his hand out. His fingertips were pinched with a metal bug the size of a grain of rice. It was motionless right now, more like a work of art than a tool. The altered human raised the metal bug before his eyes. It was like he was looking at a treasure, carefully sizing it up. The smile on his face deepened with every glance. The intensity of the red light in his mechanical eyes continued to grow. Luo Nan took advantage of the metal bug's appearance to use his mental senses to cut across its surface in an attempt to understand its internal structure. But he discovered that it wasn't easy to balance distance and precision at the same time. He was separated by a distance of over 100 meters, and the precision of his senses was at most on the millimeter level. It was already very difficult for him to analyze the interior of the jeep. Right when Luo Nan was considering whether or not he should get a bit closer, a high-powered motorcycle rumbled from behind the road roller. Soon, it circled around the reamer and ran alongside the deformed jeep. Cragburst gave a provocative gesture to the driver's seat atop the motorcycle. "Hey, come at me again if you have the guts. I'll let you use only one hand." The altered human's smile faintly faded. His ice-cold mechanical eyes cut to Cragburst's side, but he didn't immediately respond. Cragburst's provocation continued, but it was mixed with something else. Cragburst used to be from District 55 of the coastal garrison. "Give me your name. I'll burn incense for you later." The altered human's lips and teeth opened and closed slightly within the jeep's driver's seat. He spoke for the first time, but the feeling was that he was mocking Cragburst, a soldier. "You're not." Cragburst discovered that there was a problem with his judgment, so there was no need for him to be polite. He was just about to exert his strength to leap and attack. But in the next moment, his opponent made an odd move. The altered human opened his mouth and stuck out his tongue. He placed the metal bug between his fingers on it, rolled it up, and sent this toy into his mouth. There was even a clear swallowing motion. He actually swallowed the metal bug. Chapter 106. As soon as he finished speaking, Black Jack leaped up and jumped down from the other side of the cockpit. His timing was perfect. At that moment, the road roller pushed the jeep to the place where the gang member's car had been flipped over. At that moment, the group of people had yet to leave. They stayed in the middle of the road and looked at the road roller that was moving slowly towards them. At first, they were dumbfounded. Then, they shouted and wanted to drive their motorcycles around it. But at that moment, Jack jumped down from the jeep and grabbed a motorcycle. He then sped up, circled around the other side of the blade, and sped back in the direction he came from. "You were a boss just a second ago, and now you're dodging." Crag cursed loudly. He lifted the front wheel of the motorcycle and forcefully made a U-turn. The motorcycle scraped dangerously past the twisting blades, and then the engine roared as it accelerated in pursuit. The speed of the two motorcycles was more than 100 kilometers per hour. In the darkness of the night, they disappeared in the blink of an eye. It wasn't a problem for Luo Nan's soul body to chase after them, but Ink had some difficulties. The two motorcycles had already driven out of his range of senses during his moment of hesitation, and they chased after them. On this side, the road roller pushed the off-road vehicle, rumbling as it rolled over. Everywhere he passed, there was a mess. The gang members cut a sorry figure as they hit to the side of the road. They cursed Crag Burst, but even more cursed Jack. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly. He listened attentively and discovered that some of the content was very interesting. But it was fragmented. He was unable to grasp the gist of it. Because of his attention, Ink also came over, and it was very eye-catching. One of the gang members was annoyed and happened to have a gun in his hand. He raised his hand and was about to shoot, but in the blink of an eye, he fell to the ground like a wooden stake, unconscious. The gang members, who had been happily scolding him, were all stunned. They looked at their comrade who had suddenly fainted, then looked up in a daze. At this moment, Ink spiraled down and stopped on the eaves of an illegal building by the side of the road. It looked down at the group of weak chickens known as the gang. In the darkness, the black crows stared at you with their dark eyes. On the ground were their companions who had inexplicably fallen because they had offended them. Such a scene made the dozen or so members of the gang at the scene all weak in the knees. Crow continued to remain silent, and the more it was like this, the more anxious and uneasy it was. Luo Nan actually felt a bit awkward being by Ink's side. He didn't want to stare at each other like this. Gathering information was the most important thing right now. The problem was that Ink was a crow. How could it communicate with humans? It was currently the center of all the changes. Following Luo Nan's decision, this Darksider species spat out a spider's silk-like thread, projecting it into the turbid flow of emotions. The human-faced arachnid was like a skilled fisherman. It used the spider's silk to hook up fish one after another. It tossed them to the lowest level of the format pyramid to stand side by side with the images of Xie Junping and cat eyes. However, they were much fainter. They were like fragile bubbles that could burst at any time. In the real world, there were over a dozen gang members. Without exception, all of them were brought under the control of the human-faced arachnid. There was nothing that could be easier than this when the emotions of fear spread wantonly. As the mastermind behind the scenes, this was the first time Luo Nan saw how the human-faced arachnid controlled its target. He was stupefied for a time, so it was actually this simple. In any case, with the establishment of the local area network and the formation of the mental connection, the following matters would be much easier. A spiritual wave was transmitted from the Hexier approximately 2 minutes later. Crag Burst had taken the initiative to contact him. Fuck. Scout, where have you been? Luo Nan was able to guess the result just by listening to the emotions in her voice. You lost them? That black rat. He can't do anything else, but his ability to dig holes in alleys is top-notch, and he even shot from the back. Hey, where's the scouting ahead? Your speed is over 100. I can't keep up. Of course, Crow wasn't able to keep up. Luo Nan obviously wouldn't explain this to Cragburst. F***ck, 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 F***ck. Cragburst let out a string of expletives. You need to pick a useful one for your spirit attachment. You need to be fast. Something like a peregrine falcon or a spear falcon. Aren't they all good? What's with a crow? Luo Nan didn't get angry despite Cragburst's complaints. The more Cragburst complained like this, the more it showed that this big guy who came from the military didn't treat Luo Nan as an outsider. Moreover, Cragburst began to trust and rely on Luo Nan's abilities. This was a very good start. Sure enough, Cragburst came to his senses and felt embarrassed. He coughed twice. Since I know you have this ability, I'll help you buy a good bird from the society later. As long as the price is right, it's not impossible to get a mutant. Sure. You can help me pick one later. Chapter 107. Who the hell knows where I am? Let me look at the map. Oh, Riverwu District's Deshang building. The top looks bright and fresh, but the bottom looks like this. Deshang. Luo Nan remembered that this was the information he had just obtained. It looked like Cragburst's pursuit ability couldn't be underestimated. They were already very close to their final target. Wait a moment. I'll be right there. Ink soared into the sky, shuttling back and forth between the intersecting buildings. Luo Nan's soul body rode the human-faced arachnid to the side. The crow's flying speed was really too slow. The human-faced arachnid didn't even use a third of its strength. It followed leisurely and leisurely. Luo Nan didn't put any energy into flying. Instead, he used the panoramic view of his mental senses to observe this dark place that he had heard of for a long time but had never set foot in. The turbid night of the recycling stratum gave him a very subtle feeling. At the very least, he didn't have too many experiences of flying in the night sky. It was more like he was swimming in a stream. And as time passed, the panoramic view cut open the deepest parts of this area and presented them before his eyes. This feeling continued to deepen and mutate. It wasn't just water. It was sewage. Everything presented in the panoramic view. The concrete details were far too jumbled and messy. There was no time to analyze them one by one. However, the things that were briefly scanned, such as gangs, prostitutes, drug dealers, casinos, and the abstractions of violence, lust, greed, numbness, and so on, interweaved and dyed together to form countless turbid colors that splashed over his head and face. Everything converged into a roaring turbid current that washed over the entire recycling stratum. It converged into the surging tide of emotions that drowned the entire Xia city. In the end, this was just a tributary. It was a bit dirtier. The human-faced arachnid was quite comfortable in this environment. It was like a fish in water. But soon Luo Nan discovered that the human-faced arachnid wandered in the turbid current of emotions. It had a slight appetite. Weren't these turbid negative emotions the food it craved the most in the past? This fellow relied on these sorts of things to grow stronger and stronger. But right now, it seemed to be disdainful. Luo Nan tried to communicate with the human-faced arachnid. His analysis of the human-faced arachnid's information was far from complete. If he forced himself to understand it, there would be a lot of confusion and ambiguity. In the end, he could only confirm one thing: the human-faced arachnid had already undergone a certain level of evolution, so much so that its original food was no longer able to satisfy its needs. After all, there was no fish that relied on drinking water to survive. Perhaps the evolution of the human-faced arachnid was equivalent to a transition from a plankton to a fish. Should he congratulate her? Right when Luo Nan was racking his brains over the problem of the human-faced arachnid eating, the Dashang building was already in sight. Cragburst had been waiting impatiently for a long time. Right now, he was standing on the 10th floor of the skyscraper, gazing into the distance. When he saw ink flying over, he waved his hand excitedly from afar. "Hurry, I found an entrance here." Ink flapped its wings, searching for a place to land. How could Cragburst wait any longer? He pointed to his shoulder and said, "Over here, I guarantee your safety." Luo Nan wasn't polite with him. He gave Ink an order and directly descended onto Cragburst's shoulder. Immediately, the two of them began to exchange information. Everything below the 30th floor of the building, including the underground buildings, has a zigzag structure. The division between the inside and the outside is actually an isolation zone. Many of the buildings adjacent to the recycling stratum are built like this. Cragburst had researched quite a bit of information while he was waiting. The isolation zone is a one-way passageway. Security is tight and all permissions are locked down. There are no normal channels to enter the business district of the building from the recycling stratum. It's the same no matter who it is. Outside of the isolation zone is the world of the gangs. They have dug through countless rat holes here. They have dug through not just the Dashang building, but the neighboring buildings as well. There are quite a few people living inside. Luo Nan listened to Cragburst's chatter and matched this part of the situation with his own understanding of the information. He organized his words and said, "According to the information I've obtained, there is an underground fighting arena here in the Dashang building. People often come here to participate in gambling fights. Many of them are big and wealthy guests who throw money away. Jack is the ace host and referee of the fighting arena. He might also be one of the bosses behind the scenes." Underground fighting. Cragburst's interest was immediately piqued when he heard the word fighting. How come I've never heard of this before? I've been to practically all the fighting arenas in Xia City, public, private, legal, and illegal. It's probably because this place is reserved for minors. The periphery of the Dashang building's isolation zone was just as Cragburst said. It was dirty, messy, and crisscrossed with dark tunnels. Luo Nan was able to obtain a lot of useful information from the mouths of the gang members. In addition to the panoramic image support of his mental senses, Luo Nan was able to move more smoothly and freely than the gangs entrenched here. Cragburst originally had a belly full of anger because he was unsuccessful in his pursuit of Jack. He wanted to vent. But he never expected that Luo Nan would just cheat and open the map the moment he arrived. Chapter 108. The other side of the wall is the quarantine area. There's also an underground fighting arena. Cragburst couldn't see anything other than the white wall. But Luo Nan was different. His soul body had already passed through the wall. He had gone in and out of the building countless times. He was probably more clear about the layout inside than the designer. He combined the information he obtained earlier and explained to Cragburst. Originally, the quarantine area didn't allow for any other arrangements aside from surveillance and defense systems. But the management of the building made modifications in order to ensure the size of the area and the viewing effect. They occupied a portion of the surrounding area. This formed a fuzzy zone. The gangs of the recycling stratum can interact with the gamblers of the upper world. One side pays in money, and the other side pays in manpower. Jack is one of the true controllers of this fuzzy zone. This is his lair and his cornucopia. Cragburst didn't ask for more details. As a man who frequently entered and exited the underground fighting arena, he was even more clear than Luo Nan about the inside of the building. The management of the building should be the house of bankers. Only through this place could one transform incorporeal credit into tangible wealth in the current society of credit and authority. But he didn't care about this at all. He was only interested in how to capture Jack. Jack is in the fighting arena, right? How do we get in? Do we smash a passageway out? Cragburst was a bit eager to give it a try. This is a passageway. It's used for emergency evacuation. The design is that it can only be opened from the inside. Luo Nan let ink flap its wings to wake up this bro whose brain was filled with violence. The problem was that it was completely ineffective. Roar roar. Let's be a bit more direct. Watch me. No. Wait. Wait a few more seconds. Luo Nan's voice had yet to fall when the white wall in front of him slid to one side. The inner layer of steel plates slid in the opposite direction. Only then did the ice-cold metal wall appear. But this wall also split open from the middle, revealing a dimly lit passageway. 3 layers of protection, especially the last layer that was 10 centimeters thick, made Cragburst speechless for a time. He didn't bring up using violence to open a passageway again. As for the passageway in front of them, it wasn't too long. One could see to the end with a glance. The door on the other side was half open. An even more intense light seeped in. There was also clamorous noise coming in. Clearly, the outside was a certain location of the underground fighting arena. Cragburst first looked at his feet. There was a person sitting down in the passageway. The person was already unconscious. He turned his head and looked around. Soon, he found that there was a password plate on top of the man's head. The corresponding screen showed that the password plate had been successfully opened. Your mole. Cragburst quickly corrected this preposterous thought, but the following conjecture was even more preposterous to him. Don't tell me that you controlled this guy through the wall and made him open the door. Bullseye. Speaking of which, the effects of hypnosis combined with the human-faced arachnid's fishing technique were quite decent. Luo Nan just chuckled through the hex ear, maintaining a bit of a sense of mystery. He indicated to Cragburst to close this emergency passageway. This place was certainly connected to the control room. Though they couldn't hide it for too long, they could hide it for as long as they could. What the hell, this isn't just spirit attachment, it's some kind of ability enhancement. Actually, you can let the crow have some of your abilities, right? Do you have wizard blood? Or do you come from some secret order? Cragburst's thoughts were getting more and more outrageous. Luo Nan was really worried that the words, "his soul is in an out-of-body state," would come out of Cragburst's mouth. Luo Nan could only interrupt Cragburst once more. Let's speed things up. It's very likely that Jack is only using this place as a transit point. The isolated area can't enter the business district of Deshang building, but there's a direct passageway to the upper city district. Cragburst immediately shut his mouth. He simply cleaned up the scene and passed through the passageway. There was a circular hallway outside. The curvature was extremely obvious, making people feel that the space was indeed limited. The operator of this place had indeed made use of the space to the extreme. On the concave side of the wall, there was a curved wall projection every now and then. On it, there was an exciting scene in the arena. Sure enough, they're all kids. Cragburst's brows furrowed. He was a professional, so he felt vexed by the various scenes displayed on the screen. They have a certain amount of fighting techniques, but they're all competing in the dark and ruthless. They're trying to kill people. Many of the scenes of being knocked down on the screen had broken hands and feet, or they had been struck in a vital spot. Cragburst wouldn't even blink an eye at these things in the adult fighting world. But the two combatants on the screen didn't look to be older than 15, which was the same age as Luo Nan. They were a group of half-grown kids. They didn't hold back in the slightest. Did they really know what this represented? Many of them knew, judging by the ominous glint in their eyes. And the feeling brought about by this sort of warped thinking made people feel even more uncomfortable. The sound of footsteps came from both sides of the hallway at this time. Cragburst's intentions were to just go up and be done with it. But Luonan indicated for Cragburst to go to the other side, to a room with a thick curtain covering the door. Cragburst thought that this was the passageway to the fighting arena, but he discovered that it seemed to be a lounge after entering. The layout was very simple and crude. There were only wardrobes and benches. The passageway to the fighting arena was further inside. There was already a person in the lounge right now. He wore combat shorts, and his upper body was bare. He didn't wear shoes, and a towel was draped over his head. His face was drooping. It seemed that he was conserving his energy. He should be the next competitor to take the stage. He didn't have a coach or a friend by his side. He was all by himself. His entire body was cold and gloomy. He actually didn't react at all to Cragburst, the big guy who had suddenly barged in. Cragburst was a bit stupefied. Then he discovered that the room was actually very noisy. There was a display screen in the lounge as well, but it was a bit smaller than the one outside. The sound from the display screen was quite loud. It made people wonder what use this lounge could serve. The display screen just so happened to jump to a new scene at this time. "Look, Jack." Luonan reminded Cragburst to pay attention. The two's minds shook, but they soon discovered that this was just a video clip. Jack was wearing a referee uniform at the time. He wore a bow tie. His body was ramrod straight, and he had a sense of propriety. Aside from the unsightly scars on his face, he looked more like a noble steward than a referee. It was no wonder that his hosting and refereeing were so popular. "This match isn't bad." Cragburst used a professional gaze to evaluate the tall and skinny one. His foundation is very solid. He has a sense of propriety in his attacks. He's a very good control-type competitor. Hold on. There's something wrong with the editing. The editor had chosen this shot to be the scene of the tall and skinny kid slowing down, dodging, and circling around, which Cragburst had praised. It was completely different from the intense fighting scene before. Such camera language should be hinting at something. Luonan discovered that the competitor, who had his head lowered all this time, had raised his head to stare at the display screen. His thin and pale face was revealed beneath the towel. He was unexpectedly calm, and he continued to ignore Cragburst to the side. Chapter 109. The focus of the human-faced arachnid's attention was on the quiet and silent competitor. This person's age was about the same as Luonan's. His reserved and gloomy nature was about the same. However, the reason for the human-faced arachnid's attention was certainly not because of this. The feedback Luonan received was mostly anticipation and hunger. He was like a glutton, staring fixedly at a dish that was gradually cooking on the stove. He felt it was a pity to eat it, but he was impatient to not eat it. "This is the new food you've chosen." Luonan had just been pondering over the changes in the human-faced arachnid's diet. Now he had a true reference. He couldn't help but spend a bit of energy to pay attention, but how could he understand it in a short period of time? And at this moment, the camera turned. The strangely edited match ended, and there was even a post-match scene next. The two competitors stood in the center of the fighting stage, and Jack stood between them. It seemed that it was time to announce the victor. From the previous clips, the lanky kid's advantage was extremely clear, even though he had inexplicably less clips. He displayed an astonishing level of control. However, Jack wasn't in a hurry to announce the victor. He lowered his head to look at his watch. At this moment, the background music of the edited scene strangely stopped. This caused the sharp whistles and whistles from all four sides of the stands to grow louder, more clamorous, and more deafening. Finally, Jack made a move. He spread his arms, but he didn't act like a normal referee, grabbing the competitor's hand. Instead, he wrapped his arms around the shoulders of the two teenagers. It looked extremely intimate. But at this moment, the children's bodies went rigid. Jack wasn't in a hurry to announce the victor. Instead, he spoke like he was reciting a poem. His voice passed through a miniature microphone and spread throughout the entire arena. As the referee, I must judge fairly. This is a conservative fight. The screams from the stands suddenly rose to a whole new level. A fight that has gone beyond time. The screams and cheers grew louder and louder. Some people even stood up and waved their arms towards the fighting stage. This spurred on even more people. Soon, no one was sitting in the entire fighting arena. Jack's expression didn't change as he spat out his final judgment, a fake fight. The people in the stands went completely crazy. The chaotic clamor had already converged into a simple yet heart-sinking sound, kill, kill, kill. On the fighting stage, the faces of the two teenagers were deathly pale. They wanted to struggle, but they were firmly clamped down by Jack's iron arms. Jack said with a smile, "There are no losers, and there are no winners." Before he finished his sentence, Jack exerted force in both of his arms. The crisp sound of bones breaking was transmitted to the entire audience through the microphone on his body. The shoulder bones of the two youths instantly fell apart. A powerful force closed them up, crushing their sternum and spines. Then, the two youths who were no longer human were forcibly hugged in front of Jack's chest, causing them to hug each other. A pair of faces that were bleeding from all 7 orifices collided with each other, and then softened into 2 piles of dead flesh. Jack relaxed his arms, and the 2 corpses slid down. Without even looking, he crossed his arms and waved. Team ending, friendly match. Pass. F***CK. Without waiting for the next scene to change, the display suddenly caved in and cracked. Cragburst's fist had directly smashed it apart. Such an intense reaction thoroughly exposed Cragburst's position. But how could he care? He spat again, a bunch of dregs. The quiet contestant turned his face. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but this emotion was extinguished before it could reach his face. In the end, he simply spat out 2 words. You guys. Cragburst stared at him with wide eyes. Kid, you want to participate in this bullshit fight? I'm the next one. Cragburst waved his hand roughly. Fuck the next one. Since I'm here, there will never be a next one. That way leads to the fighting arena, right? Cragburst was about to step out as he spoke. Not only was his sense of justice bursting, but the things that happened in this fighting arena made him, a fighting enthusiast, feel disgusted. Luonan helplessly called for Cragburst to stop when he saw that Cragburst was about to smash the fighting arena to pieces. This was already completely out of line with their original intentions, okay? I'm willing to bet that as soon as you enter the arena, Jack will immediately disappear without a trace. Even if you knock over everyone in the arena, what's the point of letting this murderer escape? That's the problem with your scouting. Why haven't you found that black-skinned rat yet? Cragburst made the same mistake as Luonan in his excitement. He forgot that he was communicating through the psychic wave network and directly spoke. The quiet competitor saw that Cragburst was talking to the air. His eyes streaked across the air and didn't see anything else. In the end, his eyes stopped on the crow on Cragburst's shoulder. He opened his mouth, a little hesitant, but finally said, "Sir, are you talking to the crows?" Cragburst stared blankly for a moment. He turned his head to look and said, baffled, yeah. Cragburst regretted it as soon as the words left his mouth. Such a reply was too stupid. But at that moment, the quiet contestant, who had been expressionless all this while, actually smiled. So it's Mr. Crow. Can I talk to him too? A slightly shaky smile and surprisingly childish words blossomed in the narrow lounge. It was also at this time that Crag burst and Luo Nan truly and clearly realized that this fighter, who was about to walk onto the fighting stage and receive fatal adjudication, was truly just a half-grown child. At the same time, the deathly still eyes of the 15 or 16-year-old boy in front of him flashed slightly. His entire body's life force and spiritual energy rippled out from his long and narrow eyes. Crag burst didn't know what to say when faced with such a face. In the end, he could only shrug his shoulders. Fine. If he's willing. Borrowing the force of Crag burst's shrug, ink flew and jumped, landing directly on the arm of the quiet contestant. Of course, this was under Luo Nan's indication. Oh. The quiet contestant was delighted by Ink's intelligence. Then he slightly straightened up and bowed very solemnly toward Ink. My name is Rui Wen. They call me Marauder, but I'm nothing more than a crow. This is my 100th match, and it's also my last match. I hope that Mr. Crow can give me his blessings. This time, there were a few more words. Luo Nan discovered that the quiet contestant was called Rui Wen, right? His voice was quite special. It seemed that his voice hadn't gone through puberty yet. There was a bit of sharpness within the hoarseness, and there was a natural resonance of breath. It was very unique. It made people feel that if he were to sing, he would be quite good. That, Crag burst didn't quite understand. He tried to interrupt but was stopped by Luo Nan. This sort of feeling was far too familiar. The current Rui Wen was the same as Luo Nan many times. He was completely trapped in his own circle, forming his own logic. There was no need to forcefully break it. Perhaps this was the chance for him to relax the most. It was the moment he treasured the most. And at this time, the human-faced arachnid began to stir. Within the eyes of this newly promoted glutton, there was a bright seed rising from the dark and desolate abyss. Even though the seed was bound and surrounded by the filthy and turbid streams, it was pure and untainted. It was pure and transparent. Chapter 110. Luo Nan's senses were synchronized with the human-faced arachnids. The human-faced arachnid was paying intense attention to Luo Nan. Such a strong stimulation also made some of the muddled information clear. Sure enough, the human-faced arachnid no longer treated the turbid flow of emotions as food after leaping from a plankton to a fish. What it was truly interested in right now was the spiritual seed that undulated up and down within the turbid flow. In reality, it was something that lived within the turbid flow of emotions, yet it was completely different from the turbid flow. It was something that possessed more vitality. It wasn't easy to form such a spiritual seed. One must have the mental cultivation to overcome filthy emotions and desires, as well as a basic positive attitude in order to finally take shape. Just like Rui Wen, he had only been in embryonic form a long time ago. It wasn't until he spoke to Mr. Crow that he broke free from his deathly still and cold state of mind. Only then did this spiritual seed finally sublimate and leap to a new level. Crag burst actually had a similar spiritual seed as well, but it was hidden deep within his powerful magma-like life force. It wasn't as pure and transparent as Rui Wen's. From the perspective of the human-faced arachnid, the spiritual seed was an incomparable delicacy. Swallowing the spiritual seed was both a form of eating and evolution. Its evolution method was very lethal. It basically used the vitality and spirituality of others as nourishment. Its path of evolution was built on the foundation of destroying the hopes of others. Without a doubt, the human-faced arachnid was an existence that was evil to the extreme. Even if Luo Nan relied on its strength to a large degree, he would not deny this point. Although he did not deny it, it did not mean that he would allow it. Otherwise, what was the difference between it and the human-faced arachnid? Luo Nan's complete control over the human-faced arachnid was displayed without restraint. No matter how intense the human-faced arachnid's desire to eat was, the heavily chained crow shook, and it had to be well behaved. At this moment, someone walked in from the passageway that led to the fighting arena. The moment the door opened, the noise from the fighting arena almost overwhelmed the small resting room. Fortunately, it was quickly isolated again. That person said loudly, "Rue-1, get ready to go on stage. The incomparable 100th match." Who are you?" "Your grandfather." Cragburst revealed an evil grin towards that person. Before that person could cry out in shock, Cragburst slapped him unconscious to the ground. Rue-1 turned a blind eye to this. He was already completely immersed in his own world. He stood up and gently swung his arms up and down. "Well, Mr. Crow, here comes my last battle. You won't be stingy with your blessings, right?" Swish. Chapter 111. Rue-1 quickly straightened her body and calmly stood in the center of the boxing ring. Her head was slightly drooped, allowing the rich and powerful people in the stands to wantonly size her up and evaluate her body. They constantly raised the stakes in the gambling house, causing the atmosphere to heat up even more. Cragburst's mouth didn't stop cursing the moment she walked through the tunnel. He turned his head to look at the spectator stands in all four directions. He just wanted to find someone he didn't like and give them a fierce beating. The problem was, there wasn't a single person in the entire arena that he didn't want to beat up. Has Jack been found yet? Cragburst paid special attention to the referee of this match. Unfortunately, it wasn't Jack. This made him even more vexed. Luonan didn't respond. Right now his mental senses had already covered the entire fighting arena. With this as the center, it covered a vast area with a radius of over 500 meters. It was equal to encompassing the greater half of the Deshang building within it. Even though the sensing range was slightly reduced due to the differences in the building materials and the interference of the radio waves, and the precision was still on the millimeter level, it was not a reason why Jack could not be captured. The modified human seemed to have completely evaporated. At this time, Rue-1's opponent was already on stage. Ignoring the string of meaningless titles, it was a stout and robust man who looked no less than 2 or 3 times bigger than Rue-1. He didn't look like a 15 or 16-year-old child at all. However, the spectators in the stands were already used to it. They cheered and egged the contestant on as well. "Dope boy. Come on, powder keg, it's time to explode. They're going to do it on stage." They're so compatible, Luonan's attention was drawn back. He was a complete layman in the field of fighting. He only had a vague concept of heavyweight and the like. He couldn't help but worry for Rue-1 when he saw the eye-catching contrast of body shapes in the boxing ring. Cragburst was quite disdainful of the fat man, a fellow who uses drugs to stimulate his maturation. If he continues like this, he won't even need to go on stage. His own weight will crush his bones. But it had to be said that this sort of thing like drug stimulation was very common in the underground fighting arenas. Rue-1 might have also taken some sort of drug to suppress the development of her secondary sexual characteristics. Otherwise, as a girl with an innately deficient physique, it would have been very difficult for her to obtain 100 victories. When all was said and done, Cragburst and Luonan had no idea what was going on. In the end, Cragburst could only comfort him, "I'm here. Even if something unexpected happens, I can save him." Ink spread its wings and slapped Cragburst's face. This fellow didn't know how to talk. "Do we need you to save them?" The crux of the problem was that Rue-1's current mental state and state were inconceivably clear and bright. But once she was destroyed by an external force, the damage to her mind would be extremely frightening. It would be much more troublesome than a pure physical injury. Luonan had just analyzed this point from the human-faced arachnid, but he was unable to explain it to Cragburst. He felt stifled to the extreme. The exchange between the two was meaningless, but the development of the fight on the boxing stage caught everyone off guard. After a full 20 minutes of prelude, atmosphere, and bets, the battle began. Faced with an opponent who was at least twice as heavy as her, Ruewen didn't retreat, but instead advanced. She rushed in from the front, and before Gunpowder Barrel's thick arms could close in, she had already broken his tibia with a single kick. Just as Gunpowder Barrel's fingers touched Ruewen's shoulder, he lost his balance and fell to the ground in pain. Ruewen easily broke away from his grasp, and took the opportunity to kick him in the head, sending him into an unconscious state. The battle ended just like that. The originally heaven-flipping scene turned cold and silent in an instant. The vast majority of people, including the wealthy guests who won their bets, were unable to accept such a simple and laughable ending. They sunk into an awkward silence. Originally, the wagered fight was just a pastime. What they truly wanted to see was the cruel and bloody scene of fists hitting flesh. Cragburst's wild laughter and his celebratory action of raising his arms and brandishing his fists were exceptionally eye-catching under this bizarre atmosphere. Even the cameras that covered the entire arena gave him a close-up. Luo Nan wanted ink to smack Cragburst's head. If this wasn't exposure, then what was? On the boxing stage, the referee was stupefied for a few seconds before going forward to examine the injury. This was just a formality. His true intention was to use this opportunity to get in contact with the person in charge and figure out what to do next. However, the big boss of the fighting arena, Jack, was unable to be contacted from beginning to end. In the end, it was the supervisor who spoke up and let the referee smooth things over first. The referee helplessly got up and grabbed Ruewen's hand, preparing to announce the victor. But Ruewen pushed his hand away. Then she borrowed the help of the referee's miniature microphone to say a few simple words: "I choose the road of adjudication." It was as if a bomb had been forcefully shoved into the oppressive and awkward atmosphere of the fighting arena with these words. First came the low clamor of several hundred people. Then came the sounds of cheering, laughing, cursing, and whistling. They flooded the entire fighting arena. The atmosphere exploded in an instant, wishing it could flip over the entire Dashang building. Aha! Challenger. Traitor. The flat-chested witch's counterattack. Stupid woman. Has your brain turned into muscle? Go die. Just tear her to shreds. No. Break her 4 limbs. Knock out her teeth. I want it. I want it. The several hundred rich and powerful spectators had personally drawn up the rules. They had designed a seemingly magnanimous path of escape. But when this rule was finally challenged, not many people could remain calm. The so-called magnanimity was just a symbolic footnote they made for their lofty status. Touching it was an offense. So in the end, all the emotions converged together to transform into a uniform howl: adjudication. 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 The referee also returned to his senses from the unexpected change. He actually felt that he had been saved. A laughable battle that had been doused in cold water had suddenly turned into a large bomb that ignited everyone's emotions. Good, good. At this time, the projectors all over the fighting arena had already taken advantage of the opportunity to broadcast information related to the road of adjudication. Various images flashed in succession, listing the 3 deathly steps of King of Fists, Beast King Battle, and Adjudication Battle. The first 2 stages, as their names implied, were fights with true adult fighters and wild and untamed beasts. Only then was it the 3rd stage. The projector timely displayed the image of a calm and callous white man wearing a referee uniform, adjudicator, Jack. The gang leader here, the gold medal host, the referee, and the murderer who had killed Ruewen's brother, was precisely the boss of the final stage. Each projector also timely displayed the scene of many contestants, including Ruewen's brother, dying at the hands of this callous referee. The fighting arena emitted a sharp whistling sound with each life disappearing until it finally stopped at the scene of Jack waving his hands and denying everything. The entire fighting arena was about to boil over. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.